I present to you a world where with power and money, you can do anything. But someone who has nothing appears and beats everyone. Beats men, beats women. Beats those who hit women too. Let's go. The Valhalla Academy is one of the top 3 hunter institutes in the world every year. Many hunters try to enter this institute, but with a success rate of 1 in 500, few succeed. And even among those who do, only 150 students can graduate. You can see that? The level of difficulty is just like real life. Right on the first day of class, there's already a bunch of people training, and anything goes people with nothing in their hands. Against people with swords, watching them is the senior combat instructor, Lee Sang-cheol. After a while, someone named Yoo Min-jun arrives to see the candidate from his family, who deserves all our attention. Yoo So-hyun from the Yoo Shin family, one of the 5 most prestigious families in Korea. Everyone who crosses her path is defeated, due to her talent with mana and the sword. She is a promising talent, but she doesn't draw much attention from the instructor, until it is mentioned that her family has communicated with a constellation guardian from the Yoo Shin family. This grabs the instructor's attention. In this world there are 5 chosen ones to be the constellation guardians, or it is normal for hunters to receive blessings and protection from the guardians, or make a contract for it. Each of these 5 guardians has a different power. The Yoo Shin family has the god of the sword de la Surala, Jangsan family the god of spirits, Jin Choi family the god of martial arts, Ocean family the god of fists, the Yan family the god of the bow. Yu Yan, having communicated with a guardian, is a great genius with incredible potential. Passing the academy test will be easy. They say this is so important that the whole world is watching through cameras. The fight of the 17-year-old super talent will be against Kim Ju-hyuk. Also 17 years old, the instructors are even surprised at how calm the boy was, knowing who he was facing, confident in an easy victory. The fight begins. Our girl draws her sword, but there's no sign of the boy. She decides to attack. Her swordsmanship was incredible, as well as her control of mana. And the attack was precise, guys. Believe it or not, he just punched her in the chest and won the fight. Our protagonist was even disappointed with the fight. And now we see the real truth. 300 years in the past 3 centuries ago, something had happened at the Tower of Destruction. 2 men were fighting valiantly. The owner, the King of Destruction Brace, remarked that it had been a great battle, leaving the martial leader Kim Hae-in O greatly weakened. Brace wore strange blue glasses and had enormous white hair. Kim Hae-in O agreed that the fight had been excellent. The MC let out a slight chuckle. Kim Hae-in O became very alert. When a panel appeared in front of him, it announced that the Tower of Destruction and its ruler Brace had been defeated, halting the world's annihilation. The enormous structure began to crack loudly. Kim Hae-in O realized the building was collapsing. After he had defeated his enemy, he groaned in pain, lamenting that this was supposed to be his moment to live in complete peace. Since childhood, he had endured heavy labor as a hunter to survive, and all the money, fame, and life he had dreamed of were crumbling before him. He knew he should have brought his disciples along, but he reconsidered this thought, because that guy had been the strongest opponent he had ever faced. Everyone could have ended up dying right there. He bids farewell to the world, with his hand on his wound, and soon begins to degrade right there. Suddenly the boy opens his eyes. Kim Hae-in O had reincarnated into the body of a young man, named Kim Ju-hyuk, 300 years after the towers collapsed. And the current time of his reincarnation was satisfactory. Even though his physical condition was weak, all his knowledge had remained. He thought that simply adapting to the new body, he could live in peace, until the translucent window appeared again, informing him that in 5 years, the Tower of Destruction would reappear, giving him that time to prepare. He was angry because that guy had already been defeated. He thought he should have burned Brace's body, but couldn't just stand there, regretting it for no reason. In that era, the conditions to conquer the tower should be easier, and this time he was determined to live and enjoy life. Something appeared on the panel, leaving him confused again. It mentioned finding lost weapons and memories. In the Valhalla Constellation room, on the 3rd underground floor, he realized everything he needed to do at that moment. It would be the 4th day in Valhalla, where the top 10 rankings would be decided. Those who were summoned had to head to the stadium. Kim Ju-hyuk got up excited to go there. All participants had to take their positions. The spectators were quite excited watching everything. This was the same moment when the senior instructor thought there were too many people. Compared to last time he observed everything from above, the newcomer Kim Ju-hyuk was ready to battle. The match would begin in 30 seconds, and his opponent was already in front of him. The eldest son of the Ozen family, Oh Si-hyuk, aged to Joblas. He was there. He wasn't very good at literature, strategy, or martial arts. However, he had a talent of the others. It was his impressive and strong physique. He could do what others couldn't without mana. And even with little training, he grew significantly stronger. He was born with a top-tier physique that required no effort, and was considered a genius. For that reason, he stared fearlessly at his opponent. With an extremely angry expression, the two were standing in front of each other. Kim Ju-hyuk showed the middle finger and insulted his opponent. This left Oh Si-hyuk furious and enraged. He charged at him, calling him trash. Kim Ju-hyuk thought that, with the body he was reincarnated into, he wouldn't win in close combat, and didn't know much about his opponent, with strength being the main issue so far. Even though the enemy had superior physical strength, it didn't mean he would win. Oh Si-hyuk tried to deliver a powerful punch to our protagonist. He dodged because he had martial arts to enhance his physique. And something very important as well. He swept the blonde bully's legs and brought him crashing to the ground. Oh Si-hyuk was left confused and unsure of what had just happened. Kim Ju-hyuk gave a slight wink with his right eye and revealed his ability to observe his opponent, landing a precise blow to his opponent's body, who rolled his eyes, blood coming from his mouth, falling unconscious and severely weakened. Kim Ju-hyuk won the battle, saying that if those two abilities weren't in harmony, this outcome would have been impossible. Even though this body was weaker than before, and shouldn't have any problems hunting monsters, and being a hunter as he once was, he headed to the exit after annihilating his enemy, leaving everyone who watched the battle perplexed. They commented on how Oh Si-hyuk was knocked out and brought down by such a simple attack. A man in the back thought deeply about all of this. In silence, he was the head of the Ocean family, the king of fists. Oh, Yoo Shin very angry at the opinion of those ignorant. Enough to call the attack simple. Even though his son had only trained his physique, ignoring martial arts, he should have easily dodged that blow. But this time it was something he couldn't evade. Stigako let his temper get the better of him, and just charged at Kim Ju-hyuk. He had even used magic, which he rarely used, try and end it quickly. But Kim Ju-hyuk tilted his head slightly to dodge. Since he was certain a strike was accurate, he shifted his entire center of gravity forward, making Oh Si-hyuk fly in despair, surprised by the missed punch. His opponent's hand was extended and open at that moment to counterattack. This meant that Kim Ju-hyuk moved faster than Oh Si-hyuk, at maximum speed, proving he already had a plan for the battle, and that alone was already a monstrous talent. Oh Shin, after processing all of this, remained silent and deep in thought. Unfortunately, many people also recognized the value of that rookie, and not all of them were ignorant. Oh, Yoo Shin thought of the name Kim Ju-hyuk, and resolved to ensure the boy would join the family. No matter the cost, the stadium lights were turning on. Many fans of Choi Arenuna were there, cheering enthusiastically. The boy was quite impressed by those lunatics, who had already served in the military, yet were clamoring for a 17-year-old girl. Calling her Nuna, that would be the final ranked match. Kim Ju-hyuk was set to fight Choi Arin, the second daughter of the Choi-in family. At the start of the match, she immediately drew her sword from its sheath, preparing to strike for the first time. Kim Ju-hyuk faced her with a calm, serene expression. The two stood still for a moment, neither moving nor speaking. He quickly assumed she was waiting for his first move, and the fact that she was at least trying to read the situation made her better than his previous opponents. He chuckled lightly, pondering what he should do at that moment. Then he started walking toward his Q opponent, who was on guard. He observed her with a frightening expression, his hands in his pockets. She stared back, fearless and unafraid. She gripped her sword with great strength and determination, releasing flashes of lightning. Everyone was impressed, because the girl had mastered the Choi-in family's elemental exchange ability. At just 17 years old, she charged at her opponent, with all her courage and determination. The boy took a slight step forward, giving her the opportunity to strike. She immediately delivered a blow with her sword, unleashing a torrent of blue lightning, with immense power, but she was left baffled, because her enemy had disappeared from in front of her, so quickly suddenly. He remarked that if she revealed her attacks, target with her eyes, it would be easy to dodge. He was standing calmly beside her. She was utterly confused by this, and out of nowhere she was struck directly on her body. Her eyes widened, showing a mix of pain and agony, like she felt relieved to have defended the blow. Kim Ju-hyuk stared at her without saying a word. Choi Arin quickly grabbed her impressive sword, flying backward with it in her hands. Kim Ju-hyuk was impressed, because the girl had managed to block his blow with her sword, which was why he hadn't felt the impact on a human body, but rather on an object. She thought it was incredibly heavy. Suddenly a fist touched her sword. Choi Aron stared at her opponent before her, who challenged her to dodge the next attack. Then he unleashed a powerful strike, sending the girl flying far away. With a desperate expression, she landed on the ground, sprawled and left there. The boy thought there was something odd about that attack. It seemed like his posture was slightly off, but in the end it didn't matter, because the victory was secure regardless. The panel displayed the top 10 admissions to Valhalla, and Kim Ju-hyuk ranked first. He was walking nearby, adjusting his shoulder. Suddenly many voices left him surprised and confused. A crowd had gathered, begging for his attention and acceptance into a group. Annoyed, he shouted at everyone to shut up. Wrapping up this chapter on the news page, a headline was that Kim Ju-hyuk was on the verge of madness. Described as a crazy psychopath, 92 comments criticized him, claiming he was likely a bad person due to his reprehensible actions. For a rookie, the boy was seen as very arrogant and over the top. The comments continued, discussing his potential and negative behavior. Meanwhile, in the grand towering buildings of Valhalla, the freshmen were being warmly welcomed. Kim Ju-hyuk thought all the introductory information about Valhalla's history was boring and tedious. Then he noticed a boy behind him. The boy averted his gaze with a nervous and shy expression. Kim Ju-hyuk figured he had attracted a lot of attention the previous day, but there was still an unresolved issue, that claim about weapons and memories that the panel had ordered some time ago. On his way, Kim Ju-hyuk thought he only needed to get in and out, which seemed like an easy task. Yet he noticed something nearby. The opening ceremony had already ended by then. The virtual combat simulation room was just ahead. The former chief instructor of Valhalla, from the Trojan Guild, Kim Lee-gun, wondered why the class distribution was arranged that way. Ahead was Yoo So-yeon from the Yoo Shin family, and beside her stood Hae-in from the Trojan clan. In the middle was Hyuk from the Osin group. They had said the classes would be distributed randomly, but 3 of the 5 geniuses from the families were in the same room. And there was something else interesting. The guy glanced at Kim Ju-hyuk and noticed that he was also in that class, completely condemning the man's year. He tried to calm himself, to assert control over the situation. Right away he introduced himself, saying it was a pleasure to meet the young ones, and that he was the person in charge of the class, as well as their instructor. First, he pressed a button on the podium he was standing at. All the girls panicked at what happened next. Suddenly they all appeared in a vast field. Everyone began questioning where they were, as they had been in a completely different place. Seconds ago, Kim Lee-gun grasped the hilt of his sword and thought about showing a bit of bloodlust. Right there, suddenly, several demonic beings, hideous and terrifying, appeared, filled with rage and wielding various weapons. Everyone began screaming and panicking at the sight of it all. Oh, see, Yuk thought those were orcs and goblins, and there were at least 100 of them. Suddenly, the ugly green monster started moving toward him. One tried to strike him with its sharp clawed hand, and another tried to leap toward the boy, but it was stopped by the protective barrier. Kim Lee-gun, I thought everything was going according to plan, because the barrier was working perfectly. He then called Kim Ju-hyuk closer. The latter approached the podium, and was promptly asked by the instructor if he could handle all those monsters entirely on his own without any help. These were the monsters surrounding the barrier. The boy thought silently about his answer. Kim Lee-gun reasoned that he was now certain of the boy's diminished ego, which was natural, since most had only ever seen monsters in books and comics. He told Kim Ju-hyuk to stop pretending to consider it and just say no, so the lesson could proceed. The boy gave a slight smirk. This made the instructor angry, because the boy was laughing, and soon he discovered that Kim Ju-hyuk could, in fact, handle the monsters alone. He thought the boy was bluffing and told him to try. Since he was so confident and certain about it, Kim Ju-hyuk questioned him, saying that such a thing couldn't be done on the first day without some kind of reward for the mission. After saying that, the boy was really speaking his language, and was quickly asked what he wanted to bet on at that moment. And he replied that if he handled all the monsters, if he replies that if he handled Perusian the instructor would fulfill all his wishes, as long as they were within his power. Boy placed his hand on his chin, thinking, and said that, although it wasn't a big deal, he would accept the deal. The instructor tried to intimidate the boy, who simply asked for the sword quickly, because it would be impossible to fight barehanded, without any weapon to assist. He immediately placed his hand on his sword, and handed it over for the boy to use. Kim Ju-hyuk observed the weapon, with a delighted and excited expression. He placed it on his back, looking at the enormous challenge ahead. The instructor watched everything, with a downcast expression. All the young people were also watching, thoroughly entertained. Kim Ju-hyuk firmly gripped the weapon and began to fight, bravely and fiercely against the monstrous beings, concluding this chapter in a furious and angry expression, continuing to bravely eliminate all his opponents. One of them tried to strike him cowardly from behind, but the boy quickly gripped his weapon firmly and blocked the potential strike, without a moment's hesitation. He thought he wasn't doing too badly, considering it had been 300 years since his last action with the blade back then. Due to the monsters, humans couldn't fulfill their roles, and all types of weapons were used to kill them. But even so, the sword remained a very familiar tool. He attentively observed two things, as he had noticed something strange. There was a monster trying to attack him, mercilessly and cowardly from behind. Kim Ju-hyuk quickly dodged the cowardly strike, and everything was just as he had imagined, following a very simple pattern. It was just a very well-made NPC monster simulation. Everyone inside the capsule watched him, thoroughly impressed. Kim Lee-gun thought it was impossible, as he had only lent the boy a mere, almost useless sword. It had no magical power or fast fencing capabilities, yet the boy was cutting through everything, with incredible ease and mastery. It was as if the sword was absorbing all those monstrous beings. The girl was stunned, and the boy reflected on all that madness. She observed him through the protective capsule, standing completely still. She remained silent, not uttering a single word. With an expression of amazement and perplexity, Kim Ju-hyuk stated that he wanted to go to the constellation room. Since he had defeated all those weak enemies, he left the area and headed toward the protective barrier. He then asked if the instructor would fulfill his promise, making him visibly angry and irritated. The sun was already setting. Amidst those towering buildings, Kim Lee-gun wrapped up his class and advised the tired students to rest in their dormitories. Without lingering in the area, the boy was slumped in a chair in the classroom, thinking the class was too long, and wanting to grab his belongings, to leave as quickly as possible. He also thought about how he never wanted to teach students and hadn't even gone to school himself before. And while the class had been boring most of the time, he had managed to gather a lot of important information, especially regarding topics related to the history of constellations. In his previous life, there was no such thing. Speaking of it, constellation was the term used to describe the transformation of those who amassed great fortunes into deities often connected with hunters. Valhalla, in Korea, was the third largest academy in the world, containing various constellation relics. Kim Ju-hyuk thought that everything about slaying monsters and swordsmanship seemed useless, and that he should head to the dormitory to focus on practicing martial arts, as his body was quite weak. But suddenly he noticed something unusual. It was the white-haired girl approaching from behind. Meanwhile, in the professor's office, a man sipping coffee commented that his friend had been through a lot. Kim Lee-gun admitted that, to be honest, it was more embarrassing than truly painful, and questioned whether that boy was really a high school student. To Lee Sang-cheol, who was astonished to learn that the boy had killed 120 monsters in the simulation room without having ever seen one in real life, what Kim Lee-gun was saying was absolutely true. From what the senior instructor observed, Kim Ju-hyuk seemed ordinary, but carried something in his past. Kim Lee-gun was impressed to discover that the boy was an orphan, from a small orphanage in a highly dangerous area, and by no means was he lying. It's Lee Sang-cheol had conducted his own research on the matter. Furthermore, a fraud wouldn't attempt to enter Valhalla by causing a scene at the opening ceremony. Lee Sang-cheol and asked if the boy had requested to enter the constellation room. Receiving an affirmative response from Kim Lee-gun, the senior instructor said he would let the boy go to the first floor of the basement, according to the director's instructions, making his friend very grateful for it. And since he had brought him there, he should take responsibility. Besides, he didn't know much about the completely restricted area on the 5th floor, but there should be no problem with a quick visit to the first. Kim Lee-gun expressed concern about what might happen in the next year, leaving his friend confused. His class had 3 students from the 5 families, and it wasn't easy to manage even one of them, which the senior instructor fully understood. He didn't try to comfort him, but mentioned there was an exchange student from the Ventric family in another class, leaving him quite surprised. Rockdale Ventric belonged to the Direct Ventric group. Kim Lee-gun had heard that the boy had been expelled from the British Academy for causing trouble. He took a deep breath, still somewhat worried, and said that after hearing that, he felt his situation was better than the neighboring class. Kim Ju-hyuk looked at the girl with a dubious expression. She also stared back at him without saying a word. He broke the silence, asking what had happened. The girl asked him to teach her all those swordsmanship techniques. Concluding this chapter, Kim Ju-hyuk didn't quite understand all of it. The girl was very eager to learn the swordsmanship he had demonstrated earlier, but he responded negatively, and she questioned his decision. He replied that it was simply because he didn't want to teach, and since the girl had nothing more to say, he would leave. She looked into his eyes and asked, "Please," he answered again, that he simply didn't want to teach her. Insulting her, he called her deaf, and told her to stop following him immediately. Because Kim Ju-hyuk had no intention of teaching her, he walked away from the spot immediately, leaving the girl there alone, looking sad and disappointed. The next day, in the grand buildings of Valhalla, Kim Ju-hyuk was sitting in his classroom chair, very quiet and deep in thought. At that moment, he looks at his hands and realizes his body was better than he thought. Yet he couldn't do much since he had no magical power, and it was hard to control his mana. This problem could be resolved if he found that thing, and for that, he would prepare a little magic. Suddenly, someone approached him speaking. It was a blonde show-off bully. He was Rockdale Vendrick, accompanied by his assistant Yuria de Felix. He walked over to Kim Ju-hyuk's desk. Kim immediately asked for his identity. Rockdale Vendrick thought the boy was uneducated. Since he didn't know his family, he quickly introduced himself and said he didn't want to waste time. He asked if Kim Ju-hyuk was interested in becoming strong. He invited him to join the main Vendrick family. In most families, the affiliated lineages had more difficulty gaining power and wealth compared to the main branch. However, the Vendrick family had a big mask, a constellation guardian, making it different from others. Typically an S-class soldier or higher would protect the organization directly, selecting a star member and granting them power and protection. But for the Vendrick family, they chose to sign an agreement with a non-constellation individual to avoid contractual misunderstandings. Due to this unique decision, the organization held significant power in Europe, and joining it would grant immense influence. With this authority, Rockdale Vendrick, supported by his family, had become excessively arrogant. Something had happened not too long ago. Due to an incident at the British Academy, he had been expelled, but he wouldn't cry over spilled milk at the door of that place. Alongside his assistant, he declared he always got what he wanted, and even though he had been expelled before, being from the Vendrick family meant they would always find a way to put him back on track. After all, that person would enjoy it too much. Returning to the present, he tried to talk to Kim Ju-hyuk. He thought he could have the boy, who had been the center of attention, at the entrance ceremony on his side. So he offered the boy a proposal to take him to the Vendrick family's constellation. If he accepted, but he was arrogantly declined, he stood there stunned and not knowing what to do. At that moment, his assistant also made a strange face. He became furious, but Kim Ju-hyuk wasn't naive and realized he wasn't truly interested and had just won to Rockdale. Vendrick angrily called the boy a rude, disgusting brat. Suddenly, an authority figure arrived, ordering everyone back to their seats and calling out the show-off. This made him even angrier, because the man addressed him by his full name. The man was the senior instructor, Lei Sang-cheol. He emphasized Valhalla's rules, reminding everyone that this wasn't the academy. The show-off thought about that man, knowing he was a combat instructor. He gritted his teeth in rage and fury, returning to his seat quietly with his servant. He declared he would encounter Kim Ju-hyuk again. Someday Kim watched everything with his red eyes, without saying a single word. Later that day, as school ended, Kim Ju-hyuk thought about how he hadn't learned anything related to the Constellation Hall during the lessons, and had instead gotten involved with an idiot. That morning, he pondered many things about the Guild Scouts, students and instructors who wanted to recruit him, despite his criticism of them. Once again, someone approached him from behind. It was the persistent girl, asking him to teach her fencing. Again, he became annoyed, realizing it still wasn't enough for her either. Back in the Grand Valhalla dormitory, in the highest class hall, inside someone was seething with anger, smashing chandeliers with uncontrollable fury. It was the annoying and arrogant Rockdale Vendrick. He was infuriated by the orphaned Kim Ju-hyuk, who had humiliated him. He demanded that Yuria immediately call Dasara, as he needed someone to deal with a certain person. Ending the chapter. Rockdale Vendrick continued to simmer with rage. He once again called his poor assistant by name. She stayed quiet and still as he spoke. He grabbed her hair forcefully, and demanding she respond immediately. He then asked if she still believed herself to be the eldest daughter of the palace family. He threatened to throw the poor girl out of the group, prompting her to beg him out too. He swiftly threw her to the ground. With all his strength once more, he ordered her to call Dasara, as there was someone for him to deal with it. Also instructed her to inform a second-year member of the Rice family that he wanted to see him. The terrified, helpless blonde assistant replied affirmatively. At the Valhalla dormitory, specifically in Kim Ju-hyuk's room, he was meditating, with bright blue magic radiating from his body. He was deeply focused on what he was doing. Suddenly he coughed, releasing a lot of smoke, realizing once again that his body was truly useless, and couldn't summon any magic with it. He entered a deep silence. Lost in thought, he began recalling his return to the dormitory that afternoon, when the girl had appeared behind him once again, and approached him for the second time. They had already reached the dormitory door, and she kept following him, and she repeated her request like a parrot, being so irritating, and almost begged for action to be taken. He then proposed 10 million, one per lesson. The girl lived deeply saddened and disappointed again, and since she probably couldn't afford it, he had decided to leave suddenly. She asked for his phone, leaving him utterly confused, and, unsure of what was going on, he asked why she was doing that. She was adding her number, so it would be easier to transfer the payment. Leaving Kim, Yoo-hyuk even more astonished. Out of nowhere, he received a notification on his phone. It was a transfer of 100 million won. And now, he was supposed to teach her his impressive and masterful techniques? He said he wouldn't do it, and would decline the transaction. Returning to the present, he reflected on how shocked he had been earlier. How could a high school student have 100 million won? If he were to teach her, he wouldn't have to reveal all of his secrets. But the sheer amount of money was overwhelming. He figured he could use it for what he needed, so it didn't matter. Even if his mana was as limited as a beggar's, he stood up ready for his mission, taking his first steps toward victory. He was going to find the secret vault. At that moment, even amidst complete darkness, he walked through dense vegetation, and he thought about how he had checked beforehand. But most vaults hidden 300 years ago had been destroyed. According to his research, only 4 might remain, and it was likely that just 3 were left. One thing was certain: they would be in the Valhalla mountains, and he would search without giving up. He began to channel all of his blue magic. The vault's location could be determined by sensing the marble which responded to his abilities, and could be detected even with minimal effort. A bright circle appeared on the ground. Finally, Kim Ju-hyuk had found something. He approached the glowing, neon blue circle and started digging with his iron shovel, once again realizing how weak his body was. He thought that if he had known about this hardship, he would have buried it in a shallower, more accessible place. And if it weren't for the Tower of Destruction, 300 years ago, there would have been no need for any of this. The world had been on the brink of destruction, and there was no safe place for his riches. So, he had built great vaults and stored everything there. With great faith, he believed the contents inside would be safe and intact as some was already rising over the towering buildings of Valhalla. And at last, Kim Ju-hyuk found what he was searching for. The long-sought vaults of treasure. The location of the lock was a mystery, but he quickly found it. A regular key wouldn't fit in that lock, so he crafted a line of magic, shaping it into a special key. It fit perfectly into the keyhole. He celebrated his achievement. The door began to open slowly, using all the strength he had in his frail body. At last, he managed to enter the vault, landing on his feet, in front of countless golden treasures. With a wide smile of joy and excitement, he even asked how his riches were doing. Concluding this chapter, he stared silently at all that money, with a thoughtful expression. Now that he didn't have to worry about money, he could search for what he needed in peace. Suddenly, he was startled by something. He saw the storage stones were right before him. To maintain the vaults, he had imbued them with a bit of magic, and the day to use them had finally arrived. He picked up a magic stone in his hand. It began to emit a bright blue light. This was expected of a storage stone, as its magical power should overflow. In exactly that way, he stopped extracting the magic, and said he would first take care of the remaining storage stones, deciding to transport the lighter jewels before the heavy gold bars. The day was beautiful in Valhalla. Kim Ju-hyuk was once again sleeping in his chair. Like a zombie, he thought. He must be a cursed lunatic for planning to build a vault in the future, as his muscles were already aging, just from dating a little. Suddenly, the girl appeared in front of him again, asking him to teach her swordsmanship techniques. It really seemed like she wasn't going to let it go. He reasoned based on his information why she had chosen him to teach her swordsmanship, and soon asked Aaron Choi about her persistence, since she could learn everything from her family. She replied that she had never seen anyone handle a sword better than Kim Ju-hyuk. He then questioned her about her father, as he was the head of the Trojan family, and probably better with a sword than him. Just as she was about to talk about her father, the instructor called Kim Ju-hyuk to the teacher's lounge, leaving him very confused about it. But it was all related to the things he had asked about last time, and since he really wanted to know, he quickly got up without hesitation. He rose from his chair and left, leaving the girl standing right there. She asked for permission to speak. She remained silent for a moment, with a slightly sad expression. Kim Ju-hyuk told her that the next day, at 6 inches the morning, she should meet him at the local training field. She was stunned by the information she had just received. The boy asked if she didn't want that opportunity. She had a moment of realization, and replied that she would definitely be there. Meanwhile, in the nearby teacher's lounge, the instructor sat in front of the boy, and since he had a class in a few minutes, he spoke quickly and without delay. First, Kim Ju-hyuk's access to the Constellation building had been approved, and he only needed to go to the building's basement. However, he was not authorized to enter any floor. Below the basement, he replied affirmatively, and promptly asked when he could do it. He found out he could go that same night, and confirmed he would do so. Kim Min-gun was very surprised, as he thought the boy would make a scene about not being authorized to go below the first basement floor. Finally, the two parted ways to attend to their respective duties, and the boy left the room immediately. After that, Megan had already fallen in Valhalla. This was the place they sought. It was the treasure of Valhalla Academy, in the Constellation Hall. The boy observed everything around him. There were 2 guards dressed in black, standing and keeping watch, as he carefully observed everything. One of them was speaking into a radio with someone. Kim Ju-hyuk remarked that the security was stronger compared to the main gate, and was told that this demonstrated the importance of the constellation building. He thought not only about the guards, but also about the exterior walls. They were covered with all kinds of magic, completely surrounded except for the entrance. Kim Ju-hyuk wanted to ask his professor for clarification. He then questioned how someone could descend to the second basement floor, and whether it would be illegal. Kim Lim-gun quickly replied that it wouldn't make someone a criminal, but would get them expelled from there. Moreover, they'd go insane before leaving the school, leaving the boys slightly confused about it. Kim Lim-gun then explained that on the second floor, the magical power of the constellations flowed without restriction, and anyone who touched the magic would have their mind shattered. The boy quickly grasped the situation. Meanwhile, the instructor wondered why the boy had asked about this before entering the building, as it seemed like he truly wanted to go down there. But he soon dismissed the thought, reasoning that the top entry candidate wouldn't do such a thing, since staying at the academy was much better. Kim Lim-gun informed him that he had only 30 minutes. Boy replied affirmatively, saying he'd be back soon. Suddenly, the panel appeared, displaying and ordering the same things as before. He observed it carefully right there. Kim Ju-hyuk didn't care about being expelled, since he had come to Valhalla solely because of that place, and he had to go to the third basement. First he wondered why there were so many endless stairs in that building. As he descended them quickly, suddenly he saw something ahead of him. That place looked like a massive prison. He was sure the Constellation Hall was on the first basement floor. All of it didn't seem that important, leaving him uncertain about going deeper. Suddenly the panel appeared again, informing him that the requirements were met, and that he was being transported to the hall, leaving him uncertain about what was happening, and where this place might be. Suddenly he began disappearing. From there, along with the panel, someone possibly familiar greeted him in the new location. It was the infamous enemy Brace. He looked at Brace, utterly surprised, and wearing a terrified expression. Brace remarked that after 300 years, and this was their reunion. Suddenly, in the middle of his speech, he received a strong punch to the face. Kim Ju-hyuk had delivered a direct blow to his enemy, and he was quite pleased to see that cursed figure. Brace asked his enemy to calm down, but he received another punch to the face. He tried to pacify the situation for a proper conversation, but yet again he was struck, because Kim Ju-hyuk only wanted his death. All his attempts to stop the fight were useless. He was already on the ground, weakened and defenseless, and Kim Ju-hyuk was growing tired of fighting. He then remarked that he wasn't the kind of person who used fists, but this case was different, because Brace had destroyed his future. On top of that, Brace had ruined his wealth, honor, and all the time he had invested in his disciples. Brace then asked if Kim Ju-hyuk wasn't curious to know what kind of place this was. Kim Ju-hyuk admitted he was curious, because there didn't seem to be anything peculiar about it. Brace explained that this was an imaginary world, a space within a relic, leaving Kim Ju-hyuk enthused. What Kim Ju-hyuk was seeing, according to Brace, was purely imagination, because his body had ceased to exist 300 years ago. Yeah. He wanted to say that he had always been within that relic. The boy was deeply shocked, as this revealed something significant. Brace gave a slight smirk at that moment, and declared that he had become a constellation, leaving Kim Ju-hyuk speechless for a moment. Then, in anger, he delivered another strong punch to Brace's face. Meanwhile, outside the building, Kim Lim-dun had been waiting for the boy for quite some time. Suddenly something appeared before him. It was Kim Ju-hyuk being searched by the local guards. Lim-dun questioned if the boy had done anything strange, but Kim Ju-hyuk said he had only looked around. He added that he hadn't gone any deeper, because he didn't want to lose his head. The instructor then ordered him to go home, and Kim Ju-hyuk agreed. He soon left the place on his way back to the dormitory. He recalled a reunion with his terrible enemy from the past, and he didn't care that Brace had become a constellation. He only wanted an answer. About what that transparent notification panel was, Brace claimed to know nothing about it, and immediately received another punch to the face, because Kim Ju-hyuk wasn't joking around. Brace explained that, after being killed, he had been trapped in that thing for 300 years, without any power. Kim Ju-hyuk calmed down after hearing this, opening his hand, discovering that Brace had also received that same notification. The information stated that Brace was to contact the reincarnated Kim Ju-hyuk to retrieve his memories. And because of that, a suspicious figure had emerged, making him question the reason for becoming the owner of the Tower of Destruction. Kim Ju-hyuk was shocked and uncertain about who this man was and what he was doing. Brace then admitted he didn't know, as part of his memory was missing and wouldn't return all at once. He then asked what Kim Ju-hyuk's notification said. Kim Ju-hyuk explained that the notifications instructed him to find a weapon and memories, but he couldn't read the lower part, as it was censored by some symbols. He also didn't recall losing memories, because he still remembered. The brace suggested that perhaps not everything had come to his mind yet, since he had already found the weapon, and the rest would come naturally. Kim Ju-hyuk was puzzled about the weapon. Brace explained that this space was the realm of the 4 village swords, which had become sacred relics, and that he had become a constellation because he had used one of them. Kim Ju-hyuk called him a cursed being, once again filled with rage. Back in the present moment, Kim Ju-hyuk reflected on how his village sword had become a relic and housed the constellation, leaving him deeply confused. He wanted to destroy everything and leave it behind. But there was one issue. Kim Ju-hyuk grasped a blue magical sword with his hand. He began thinking about Brace, who had once been called the King of Destruction, and how the new mission on the panel was only achievable with the village weapon. Suddenly someone arrived asking for his identification. They were a group of bullies and show-offs. The leader of the group, it was the eldest son of the Sunrise family, Lyric Sunrise, who said the seniors were away on a trip, and demanded they introduce himself. Kim Ju-hyuk wondered, what kind of senior and bully accepts freshmen? The show-offs commented on the boy's behavior, and his lack of manners for not saying hello. One of them said he wanted to beat the boy up, and received the leader's approval. He approached Kim Ju-hyuk holding something in his hand, but as he started talking about the differences between first and second years, he took a massive kick straight to the chest. Kim Ju-hyuk told the thugs to come at him, and stop talking so much, ending the chapter. The short-haired show-off groaned in pain and agony from the kick he had taken. Kim Ju-hyuk leaped, preparing another precise strike, and delivered another blow, this time to his talkative enemy's face. The boy flew far, utterly destroyed and severely battered. He landed on his backside, causing a loud thud in the area. Finally, he hit a wall, stopping abruptly. The blonde boy thought Kim Ju-hyuk was insane and reckless. His eyes widened as he stared at him in fear. He noticed that the boy who moments ago had no weapon now wielded a sword. Kim Ju-hyuk commented that the perfect grip felt incredible, something he hadn't experienced in a long time. He quickly ordered the thugs to attack, because if they delayed, they'd be crushed. 3 hours earlier, Rockdale Ventrick told the blonde boy he only needed to do something very simple. It was just to deal with one weak, useless student, and in return, a reward benefiting the Sunrise family would be given. Immediately, he provided the identification of the first-year student he wanted targeted. It didn't matter if the boy used weapons, as the mess would be easily cleaned up regardless. Finally, he asked if the boy would accept it. The blonde boy said he understood everything and accepted it. He left, slammed the door hard and quickly, without hesitation, thinking that the boy's first-place rank didn't matter, because he was a first-year novice and couldn't compete with someone from the second year. The difference in rank between people was inevitable due to the first year's contracts with the Constellation's Valhalla. Students had to visit the Constellation room in the second semester of their first year to form a contract and become second years. Once they became contractors, they could invoke and use the power of the Constellation. And in the blonde boy's mind, Kim Ju-hyuk didn't have an active guardian. He thought it would be easy to crush the boy. That's what he believed. But there was a problem with all of this. At that moment, the boy was already moving his sword, striking down yet another show-off. One of them cursed him holding a sharp blood-red knife, but suddenly he heard something approaching him. It was the rookie's sword, mercilessly annihilating him without hesitation. Out of nowhere, Kim Ju-hyuk heard something heading in his direction. It was another thug trying to attack him. Cowardly, the boy throwing his sharp, pointed sword, but it struck only the dirt floor. The attacker stood there, confused as he had missed his powerful, strong strike, and Kim Ju-hyuk was already beside, and mocking him relentlessly. He promptly landed a precise sword strike to the thug's filthy, ugly face. The attacker flew far from the spot, leaving his friends stunned at what they were witnessing. And finally, after flying through the air, he landed headfirst on the ground brutally and harshly. The blonde boy was shocked as the rookie was taking down the second years, one by one, without even breaking a sweat. Before becoming contractors, second years should have better skills than first years, but these had proven to be useless and weak. Blonde boy wondered about the strange, unprecedented swordsmanship technique. It seemed like the boy was just moving around, with moderate strength, but those hit could barely stand. Kim Ju-hyuk then faced the remaining opponents, and said he would crush anyone, wasting time during the fight. The blonde boy thought everyone there was deciding whether to attack or run away immediately. He told his team not to be afraid, because the boy was just a weak, useless rookie. Kim Ju-hyuk remarked that the bully leader had a lot of nerve. This comment made the blonde boy furious and enraged, and he charged at him without hesitation. But suddenly he felt something touch him. It was Kim Ju-hyuk's sharp sword striking his body. He mocked him for standing still, even knowing he would be hit, and finally, delivered a strong and precise blow to his opponent. Using all the strength he had in his body, the blonde boy wondered when the rookie had managed to get so close, and then collapsed to unconscious. Kim Ju-hyuk immediately opened his palm and slapped the boy's face several times. To wake him up, he also asked who they were and why they wanted to fight him, without any apparent reason. The blonde boy explained that they were all senior veterans. Kim Ju-hyuk thought this wasn't normal, and suspected there must be someone behind this pointless fight. The pale boy with earrings admitted it was just to break the nose of the rookie, ranked first and nothing more. Kim Ju-hyuk mocked them, speaking about their supposed loyalty as bullies, and as he was leaving, he was called back by the arrogant little boy. The boy warned him that, if people found out about the incident, the rookie would be expelled immediately. But Kim Ju-hyuk didn't care, saying everyone would know about this embarrassing and shameful defeat for the losers. Several second-year students had attempted to beat up a freshman, but ended up losing miserably, which would be humiliating if it got out, so the blonde boy should think carefully. If he wanted any chance of joining a guild, Kim Ju-hyuk left after saying that, leaving everyone on the ground beaten and humiliated. The clock struck 8:28. Rockdale Ventric anxiously waited for a call. With great anticipation, suddenly, Merrick Sunrise called him. Leaving him excited, he immediately asked the boy if the beating had been delivered, as promised, but the boy simply revealed the contractor's name at that moment, and informed him that he was withdrawing from the job and relinquishing the responsibility. Ending this chapter. The chapter begins with Rockdale Ventric being stunned by the boy's words. The blonde boy advised him to stay away from anything related to Kim Ju-hyuk from now on. He reflected on what had gone wrong with that cursed boy, because just hours ago he had been confident. He suggested filing a report with the administration, because if there were any visible bruises left, there would likely be enough evidence to proceed. If the blonde boy did what Rockdale Ventric requested, he would be rewarded and sponsored by the family. But the boy thought that, even with sponsorship from such a powerful group, they wouldn't be able to recover their lost honor. He then hung up on Rockdale Ventric, leaving him furious and enraged. He cursed the boy and smashed his phone to the ground. His assistant simply watched the scene, standing still and silent. He then called for Uriah, who responded affirmatively. She had already carried out Rockdale Ventric's orders. But since Desiree was far away, it would take a long time for him to arrive. This made him even angrier, because the boy was so distant. Meanwhile, in the beautiful country of Mexico, more specifically at the Arpia Academy, several boys lay sprawled on the ground. A brute was looking at his high-tech phone. Amidst all the chaos, he was the fearsome Desiree Ventric, and noticed that his brother wanted him to go to Korea, because he would have to deal with someone named Kim Ju-hyuk, and the reward was already prepared. Leaving him excited to hear this, he thought there was no one he could turn to for money, after being kicked out, and now a great turnaround had happened in his life. The next day, at 6 p.m. in Valhalla's Grand Training Hall, Kim Ju-hyuk was impressed by the size of the enormous space, and was already excited, ready to run tirelessly with great determination. Suddenly, someone arrived and questioned his presence there. He discovered it was Barge in the sealed sword, leaving him surprised. Kim Ju-hyuk was only impressed, because he thought the boy had escaped somehow, and would need to beat him up and put him back. But since that wasn't the case, everything was fine between them. Kim Ju-hyuk planted his feet firmly on the ground, and began stretching, while asking questions to his fearsome enemy. He talked about the sword that had become an artifact, and was currently being kept at Valhalla, as well as how they had left the constellation room with it. Kim Ju-hyuk was concerned, because Brace had swapped the weapon for a slightly identical replica. He was questioned about how he had learned to do that, and replied that even after losing all his power, he could still create such forgeries. Kim Ju-hyuk discovered that Brace, I didn't know why he had such strange abilities. Suddenly the grey-haired girl arrived at the scene. While Kim Ju-hyuk was still stretching his body, he was surprised by the girl's presence. She then asked about the swordsmanship lessons, but the boy wasn't going to teach her at that moment. Instead, they would start by improving her stamina. Contra. The cute girl looked very confused upon hearing this. Still, she was determined to learn, willing to do whatever was necessary. Kim Ju-hyuk had told her to start stretching immediately, and she responded affirmatively. Although it was basic, the girl needed to improve her stamina to better absorb mana and control it more easily. The current training method was quite strange, since it prioritized one thing over another. Equally important aspect. Koyarin, despite possessing a lot of mana, only had the stamina of a student, wielding a simple sword. She informed him that she had finished stretching. Kim Ju-hyuk immediately said they would begin real training at that very moment. The two then started doing a lot of push UPS, and they also did squats of great determination. Additionally, they performed upper body exercises. Koyaran ended up utterly exhausted, collapsed on the ground. physically destroyed and gasping for air. But she was astonished to learn that this was just the beginning of the crazy and intense preparation. Kim Ju-hyuk told her to stop being lazy and get up immediately, because they still had to run 20 long kilometers around the area. Meanwhile, in Valhalla's first year class, Kim Ju-hyuk wondered about the girl's physical condition and commented that she had a body with great development potential. She was next to him, apparently tired, with dark circles under her eyes and a physically worn-out expression. The class teacher then called for silence from everyone present. The superior class, instructor and supervisor of dimensional monsters, Lilia, informed them that they would have a simple written exam that day, even though she had briefly explained it. On the first day, she had asked all students to study, so that day she would test their knowledge of how to deal with each individual monster. The exam began shortly after. Everyone seemed deep in thought as they worked on it. Even Ko-yo-ron appeared to be struggling with the test. Kim Ju-hyuk stared at her, as if she were his most feared enemy. Suddenly, the teacher checked the time on her very advanced and stylish watch. She then announced the end of the time limit, instructing everyone on how to return the test papers. That test wouldn't count toward the general, individual ranking, but would measure their skills for the next class. Once all the tests were submitted, she informed the class that next week they would begin the first official lesson in the virtual combat communication room. He then bid farewell to everyone. As she quickly left the room, Kim Ju-hyuk remained silent after hearing all this. With a thoughtful expression, Press began questioning him about the method he used for the tests, leaving him astonished to learn that Brace had been watching everything. The enemy said he had nothing to do in there, and was asked about his thoughts on the protagonist. He explained that, to be exact, you could only hear the boy's imaginations. Related to him, Kim Ju-hyuk said he had simply written the answers as he knew them, and his enemy replied that he understood. Meanwhile, in Valhalla's first-year teacher's lounge, Esina Salasina, the teacher, was quite annoyed with Kim Ju-hyuk because he dared to call those useless phrases answers. Kim Ling-gun was walking nearby with a cup in his hand. Suddenly, he heard some strange noises around him. There was the teacher, extremely upset and furious at the moment. He approached and asked if those were the tests from his class. Receiving an affirmative response, she explained her method for preparing the next lesson and highlighted that there was valuable information within the seemingly simple test. She noted that, as expected from Class A, which consisted of prodigious children from the best families, everyone had done very well, leaving Kim Ling-gun surprised. He then said he would be on his way, and the teacher responded affirmatively. He continued, sipping his mysterious drink from the white cup. Suddenly he was startled by a loud scream, causing him to spill the entire contents of the cup. That was the moment the furious. Upon looking at Kim Ju-hyuk's test, he approached her and asked if the prodigious boy hadn't tried hard enough. It discovered that the boy had been mocking the class in such a way, leaving him astonished and shocked. Lilia stated that this couldn't be ignored, and that she would show all the answers in the next class, because it wasn't that easy to deal with monsters in such a manner. A week later, during a virtual combat simulation at Valhalla, Lilia announced that she had graded the tests from the previous class, and although most students did very well, there was a caveat. She ordered Kim Ju-hyuk to step forward. Without hesitation, he did as instructed. The two stood facing each other. Lilia handed the boy his test sheet. It was marked with numerous red corrections. The teacher then revealed that Kim Ju-hyuk had received a 0, and it seemed he hadn't taken the test seriously. He disagreed, insisting he had put effort into it. She had a few questions for him. The first was his answer to the question about the most effective method to handle a stone. Goblin Kim Ju-hyuk replied that the solution was to strike it in the stomach. The second question asked what to do if 8 wild goblins were charging at someone. Kim Ju-hyuk answered that the solution was to send each one to hell, starting with the closest. The teacher couldn't believe he was serious with those answers, and he hadn't even tried to disguise his lack of effort. The best way to kill a stone goblin wasn't with a sword, as it wouldn't be powerful enough. Lilia doubted Kim Ju-hyuk could even manage it. He contradicted his teacher, saying he would finish the fight with a single strike. This left her irritated with his nonsense and boundless ego, but she understood his confidence. And since Kim Ju-hyuk was so sure of his answer, she decided to give him a unique opportunity. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed through the area. A monster roared, trying to intimidate everyone. It stood in front of the prodigy boy, and the protagonista teacher then informed him that if he could kill the stone goblin, exactly as he had explained, she would immediately change his test grade. Kim Ju-hyuk said he understood. He placed his test on the control table. For the time being, he then selected a single sword from among all the weapons and charged towards the stone goblin without hesitation. The goblin stared at him with a horrifying, grotesque expression the teacher already knew. He had killed 120 goblins before, so she was confident in his talent. But there was a catch against this stone goblin. A random sword alone wouldn't suffice. Suddenly the goblin began to scream in pain and agony. The boy had already started landing precise blows. The teacher was astonished at what she was witnessing. The goblin groaned desperately, with a gaping wound in its body, and a deep crack in its head. Kim Ju-hyuk then began channeling mana into the fight. He discarded the simple sword. Throwing it far away, he finished the battle easily, without any real excitement. With a single strike to the goblin's stomach, the fight was over. A little girl was impressed because without any magic, he had killed a stone goblin with just one sword. The barely blonde boy watched in complete silence. Utterly shocked, even Choyarin was visibly amazed. Lilia let out a deep sigh, and asked how the boy had managed to do that. He explained that he had simply struck the goblin in the stomach, leaving the teacher puzzled. She felt that to kill a stone goblin with just a sword, one would need to be at least an A-class contractor, which made logical sense under these circumstances. Yet the boy had done it with just a weapon. He then asked if his answer had been correct, but Lilia replied in the negative, saying it had just been one question, and there were more to come. The boy was perplexed, because it seemed like everything would happen again. Suddenly the ground began to open. He was amazed at what he saw. It was a vast dark tunnel stretching endlessly. Kim Ju-hyuk immediately asked his teacher what it was about. She told him to focus and look ahead. A faint step was heard. A few monsters appeared from the darkness of the tunnel. She thought. It was challenging to control goblins with rage issues, because using the wrong technique could trigger their scream ability, attracting more goblins from the area. Typically one would fight them with magic and kill them all at once, or simply flee. And although the boy could only see 3 goblins in front of him, 5 more would appear with every mistake he made, even if he could use his sword. It would be difficult, and Lilia had heard that his speed with it was quite slow. He then began his series of strikes, hitting the enemy squarely in the forehead, making the others furious and enraged. The green goblin remained alert during the battle, but was soon struck in its cursed mouth, and fell brutally to its knees. The teacher was impressed by all of it, while the boy boasted, because he had also answered the second question correctly. On another day at the training center in Valhalla, Kim Ju-hyuk and Choyarin were training on the treadmill, running at an incredibly fast pace. The running numbers were off the charts. Soon the gray-haired girl collapsed to the ground, utterly exhausted once again. She was gasping for air. Kim Ju-hyuk looked at her without saying a single word, with an almost amused expression. He then asked if she didn't train in her clan, as she was struggling with such a simple exercise. She replied that she didn't push herself in that way. He retorted by asking how Choyarin would fight against those strong and horrifying monsters. She responded once again saying she could use her magical power by borrowing strength from the constellations. Kim Ju-hyuk thought everything was as expected, since instead of training their own stamina, they focused on magical power, because they relied on the constellations. By not improving their physical abilities, it was fine as long as they trained enough to borrow power from a constellation. But the risks were immense. There was a chance of being caught in the middle of a labyrinth or dungeon with a magic restricting spell. Additionally, their mana could be completely depleted after prolonged battles, not to mention that constellation members might refuse to lend their power. After thinking about all this, Kim Ju-hyuk called the cute girl. He asked if she thought those stamina exercises were worth anything to her. Choyarin immediately answered affirmatively, because he had told her he would teach her swordsmanship if she did them. He was stunned by that kind of response, because it was basically the reason he had her do it. She was quite confused upon hearing all of this, but they brushed it off and wrapped up the day's training, as they needed to head to the academy soon. She didn't understand why he wasn't going. Kim Ju-hyuk explained that he was going to do one more set of physical exercises. He asked if she wanted to join in too, but he reconsidered and dropped the question. Choyarin quickly bid farewell and left the place, leaving Kim Ju-hyuk alone holding a giant weight. Brace immediately asked if Choyarin was the girl's real name, to which his enemy replied affirmatively. The villain was astonished that she had endured the training without even complaining. Kim Ju-hyuk explained that he had only decided to train her in swordsmanship because she had pestered him so much. He also responded to another of Brace's questions, saying he had never revealed the truth to her, but he suspected she already knew. Both of them found it interesting that the girl had grasped his strength just by observing, which was why Kim Ju-hyuk would teach her some skills. Suddenly the boy heard something around him. It was a muscular man, bench pressing right there with enormous heavy weights. The guy was drenched in sweat and groaning from the effort. Out of nowhere, he also noticed Kim Ju-hyuk's presence. The two stared at each other briefly, without saying a word. Kim Ju-hyuk then asked how long the man had been there. The man explained that he had been around since the beginning, as it was customary for him to train after class. He quickly excused himself and left the area. Kim Ju-hyuk began contemplating the martial, skeletal structure and skills of Hae-in O. Brace immediately questioned why the boy was interested in that muscular man. He explained that Hae-in was destined to be smarter than those who only train in magical power. Kim Ju-hyuk asked Brace what those cursed constellations did, to which Brace replied that he wasn't entirely sure. The boy mocked his enemy for only being able to say that. The Brace explained that even as a constellation himself, he had been isolated there for 300 years, knowing nothing about the others. He also mentioned that Kim Ju-hyuk could probably learn more about them if he completed the new mission in the Systems tab. This left Kim Ju-hyuk deep in thought about the subject. The panel suddenly appeared with some information and precautions to be taken. It mentioned the center of the Great Valhalla Forest, home to Madagascar, leaving the boy pensive. It was a place he had heard about in class, and was the final survival location they had visited. During the first semester, he thought that if it weren't for that cursed mission, he would just leave after recovering his belongings. But it seemed like he needed to be stealthy for now. Brace immediately questioned the boy's thoughts, which he quickly justified by recalling the fight that had happened, and said that if he hadn't done what he did, his head would have been crushed, just like Brace's had been. Kim Ju-hyuk also thought that in any case, until he completed the mission, he couldn't leave, so the secrets of reincarnation would reveal themselves automatically. Meanwhile, in the United Kingdom in London, more specifically at the Ventric Mansion, the place had many old-fashioned details, with eerie paintings covering all the walls. An enormous table with a man and a woman seated at it came into view. The woman immediately began her inquiries. She was Adelia Ventric, the vice head of the household, demanding to know what had happened. The man reported that the labyrinth near Reading had been solved. Adelia congratulated him on this, and asked if there was anything else to report. At the moment, he mentioned that he was considering recruiting a few competent men he had encountered along the way, particularly a survivor from the robber clan. The leader questioned him further, to which he replied that the man was very strong, and the others were class contractors. Adelia agreed to grant them the Ventric's blessing, instructing him to conduct capability tests for them, to which the men affirmed. She then asked again if that was all for the day. Suddenly she learned that the man had a report regarding Rocktail Ventric. He mentioned hearing about a recent incident. He informed her that the sire had been summoned to South Korea. This left Adelia furious, her expression filled with rage. The sire Ventric was the black sheep of his family, the worst delinquent to exist. He had committed numerous heinous acts, using the family's name, including killing 5 people at the British Academy at the age of 19, simply because of an argument. At 20, he was completely disowned by the Ventric family. Adelia reflected on how he had been hiding for many years, and was now going to meet Rocktail. She then ordered surveillance to be placed under Rocktail's name, to which she received a firm affirmation. The man was also instructed to inform the arrogant young boy, because if he was caught doing anything suspicious, you would be removed from the family immediately. The man affirmed this once again, saying the report was complete, and excused himself promptly, leaving Adelia alone in the enormous room. She remained silent, her expression contemplative, thinking about all those cursed fools, using powers they didn't earn through merit. That ability was something beyond normal. On her chair, the words, "All for one," and "Everything is only for one person" were inscribed. In the end, all abilities were meant for her. Lost in thought, she sought confirmation from something. It was the eerie painting of the Guardian constellation on the wall back in the classroom. At Valhalla, the professor was discussing the formation of the word malefactor in modern society. This noun was primarily used to describe someone who used the powers of constellations. For evil, malefactors operated both alone and in groups. Among these organizations, the most notorious was the group Ona. God Kim Ju-hyuk thought that, while exercising made him feel stronger, he also had a knack for using mana. Though not at a genius level, he was much better than before reincarnation. Yet something still felt off. This made him question the reason for the poor condition of his body earlier. When he tried to circulation on the first day, he could barely finish, as his mana was below that of an average person, and his physical state was so poor that just digging a little left him feeling faint. Yet even with a body like that, it shouldn't have deteriorated to such a degree. Something must have happened in the past, but there was no reason to stress about it now. Suddenly a finger tapped on his desk. He looked at it calm and composed. It was the beautiful Yoo Shin. She left a crumpled piece of paper on his desk. The boy was surprised by the note. On the paper, a large I was written. Kim Ju-hyuk wondered what was going on. Now, a little while later, Kim Lim-gun announced that the students Keltara would be allowed to leave campus over the weekend, but they needed to submit separate requests. He concluded his lesson with that simple announcement. Kim Ju-hyuk reflected on the idea of leaving the campus. He quickly filled out his request for a Saturday outing, with a rather trivial reason. Brass was surprised by the boy's decision, which he confirmed was genuine, and asked where he planned to go. Before he could answer it, he heard a voice calling him. It was a cute girl wearing attire. The two had a brief conversation about what had happened hours earlier. Kim Ju-hyuk had even responded politely to her note, but she hadn't replied. He then urged her to speak quickly, as he needed to submit something and was quite busy. The little girl stumbles over her shy words. She can't form a single sentence without interrupting herself. Kim Ju-hyuk grows frustrated, calling her crazy and telling her to just nod. She becomes very angry at being insulted like that. She questions his comment, but is quickly retorted, being told that making someone angry for no reason was normal for her. He then asks again what she really wanted. She recalls a moment in time when she had been observing something. It was Kim Ju-hyuk's fight with that horrifying and ugly stone goblin. She had been impressed by that battle, especially because the boy had used only a sword without any magic. It was entirely different from what the books described. She only wanted to ask him how he had killed that ugly, a stone monster, but her pride hurt too much to allow it. Finally she sighs and musters the courage to ask him. Just as she is about to speak, the teacher arrives and asks the very same question she had been about to ask. The gray-haired, bespectacled woman seemed very excited to learn the boy's tricks. Kim Ju-hyuk simply wondered where that crazy woman had suddenly appeared from. He quickly asked why she was intruding out of nowhere, as he thought she disliked him. Leaving her confused, he then rephrased his words, asking if she didn't like him because he had embarrassed her. The teacher promptly. I replied that she didn't care about that, and had believed there was only one way to kill monsters, but the boy had shown her otherwise. She wanted to know everything immediately. She asked him if he wanted to be her assistant, to which he replied negatively, explaining that he needed to submit his departure form right away. That crazy woman. They tried to convince him in every possible way, with little success, and the two ended up leaving the cute little girl alone there. She then reflected on all the teacher's comments. Feeling very confused, taking a deep breath, she calmed herself and decided to let it all go, thinking she didn't need that humiliation. The next day, Kim Ju-hyuk was amazed by something in front of him. The enormous market was revealed, ending the chapter already. In the immense dormitory of Valhalla, Kim Ju-hyuk sits in front of his gaming computer. Grace asks his host what he was searching for on his phone, receiving the reply that it was just information about the next day's location. The protagonist wanted to find a place where he could sell the treasure found in the vault, and that seemed like a decent spot. If the enemy had understood everything, then he had indeed found it. There was a virtual marketplace that existed. On his phone, based on some information, only an entry fee was charged to exchange practically anything in that supposedly dangerous dark web shopping environment. The reason for such an unusual marketplace's existence was explained by the fact that its creator was a guardian constellation called the Secret Ruler, according to the protagonist of the story. Thus, high-class individuals openly used the tool, and despite being completely illegal, governments dared not interfere in it. That was also the reason we managed to figure out how to enter so easily, deciding to use it for a Kim Ju-hyuk read some simple tutorials on the internet. He soon notices that there was a link in the comment section of the post he was reading. Suddenly, some messages arrived from the little girl, Choya-rin. There were several bunny emojis crying a lot. She informs her trainer of her absence from the next day's training, to which he replies that he also had a commitment. Kim Ju-hyuk sends a few laughs in between the messages. This leaves Choya-rin quite confused about their meaning. He quickly explains that he was just wishing her a good trip. He also asks her to stop sending so many emojis. Kim Ju-hyuk wonders about those virtual bunnies, but quickly shifts his focus to his real goal of securing a reservation and location. He quickly clicks on something dubious on his phone screen soon. He leaves his house dressed darkly, wearing a long hoodie and a hood over his head. The location was somewhere nearby. It was probably an old cafe in the region. The entrance was right in front of him. At that moment, the wooden door of the place was old, and inside there was a huge mess. Kim Ju-hyuk opens the gates of the place to enter. Cautiously, he just needed to go inside and head to the right corner. The likely spot was right there. Close by, he opens that gray door with his hand, slowly enters another room in the place, and soon he sees something impressive in front of him. All of that was the grandiose black market. Night was already falling in the area, and the moon shone brightly in the darkness of the sky. All of it seemed very strange to Kim Ju-hyuk. It was his first time there, but the place was coincidentally very familiar. Purple sky along with the clouds and moon resembled the night he had seen 300 years ago. Suddenly, a man arrives, asking if it was the boy's first time there. The man had a cheerful expression. Wearing black clothes and bangs in his hair, Kim Ju-hyuk wonders if that guy was the employee from the post, as his leather jacket seemed very familiar. The man confirms the information, and comments on the marketplace's usage. But the protagonist only knew the rules. To a certain level, he quickly hands the man a thick bundle of cash, which the guy thanks him Kim Ju-hyuk. After doing that, he reflects on the money he spent and was about to earn. There was something he wanted to ask the man in black. The question was, where to find the right place to sell all the jewels he had, but he didn't want to auction them, as the man in black assumed. Instead, he just wanted to get rid of them quickly. The man responds that he should go to the market in the 3rd district, as many merchants there would buy anything. Kim Ju-hyuk hesitates, wondering who the most trustworthy guy in the area might be, and the man replies that it's a certain Maurice, known for offering the best prices. The man in black provides directions to the 3rd district, leaving the little visitor very grateful. But he had one more small piece of advice. He recommended that Kim Ju-hyuk wear a mask. In that area, he explains that, due to the nature of the goods traded there, everyone wore something to cover their faces, most of the time, and that mask was a complimentary gift, given to Kim Ju-hyuk, who thanks him from the bottom of his heart. The man in black asks him to enjoy his time in the area. Now, in the 3rd district of the Grand Black Market, a man in a white mask is seen observing a beautiful, shiny diamond stone soon. Kim Ju-hyuk approaches, asking for his identity. It's confirmed that the guy is indeed the real Maurice of the good prices. The protagonist informs him that he has some valuable goods to sell. Maurice said it all depended on the items, but if it was just gold or jewelry, the evaluation would be quick and practical. Kim Ju-hyuk promptly started taking things out of his large backpack. Quickly, a black bag, seemingly heavy, appeared from within. He stated that he wanted to sell the contents of that bag. Maurice wondered about the objects inside it. He immediately began evaluating the ring that was there. Suddenly, he was quite surprised by what he was observing, so meticulously in front of him. That ring was a rare artifact from the era of Destruction. It was definitely an ancient and very precious item, regardless of the angle it was viewed from. Maurice wondered if the other items were the same. Inside the bag, there were many of them shining brightly. The man with the white mask determined that they were all undoubtedly from the same era. Suddenly, he heard someone calling him, making him very alert. It was Kim Ju-hyuk, asking how much he would offer for all of it. This left him quite unsure about what to do. He wondered how such a young boy had managed to acquire so many precious, rare, and ancient artifacts. He then asked Kim Ju-hyuk where he had gotten all those items. The latter replied that such questions probably shouldn't be asked in that place. Maurice, known for his fair prices, quickly apologized for it. He regretted the mistake he had made, which put his good reputation as a negotiator at risk. He then said he didn't know how much to offer for everything. He couldn't process those items, as they were artifacts from the era of Destruction, and he lacked the capital to buy them all. Kim Ju-hyuk then considered the pieces and asked where he should go to get a fair price. Maurice explained about the tall auction building. On the way, another question was directed to him regarding how long the auction would take. He replied it would take 2 to 3 weeks, because many people booked slots, making the process slower. After another question, Kim Ju-hyuk found out he would need to return to the market personally. Afterward, he lamented learning about all these frustrating procedures. Quickly asked the approximate value his goods would reach at the auction. This made Mr. Maurice very thoughtful. He soon picked up his cell phone. He showed the approximate value, leaving the young man very surprised. The boy thought about how many zeros were on that screen, and how expensive the goods were in the past, which is why he had kept them. He then asked how much of that value Maurice would not have, based on the estimated value. The man replied that he had only 3/4 of the total amount if he sold everything he owned. Kim Ju-hyuk, slightly confused, he asked if that was truly the case. He then decided to accept the offered amount. Immediately, this left the man with a white mask very surprised, astonished, and perplexed. The artifacts from the era of Destruction had a high value for another reason, beyond their age. The other major reason was the constellations. They began to appear after that era, and, strangely, reacted well to artifacts originating from that time. Maurice thought that a powerless person could form a contract with a powerful constellation, thanks to those objects, and the alchemist's zone remained active, holding a shiny and very magical ring between his fingers. He was impressed after a second inspection, as the mana in the accessory flowed perfectly. The magic released at the end of the era of Destruction still seemed present and bore all the signs. He was very pleased, having purchased 8 artifacts from that era for such a low price. Maurice grabbed the little bag in which the jewels had been brought to him. He celebrated as he placed them inside, thinking it was truly his lucky day. Suddenly, he felt someone approaching. His eyes widened in fear. Standing there was a man dressed in black, wearing a frightening black mask. Thus ended the character's participation in that scene of the story. Elsewhere, a huge door came into view. Kim Ju-hyuk opened it with all his strength. He quickly removed the mask from his face. because it had been so uncomfortable that he had thought you might die wearing it. That place resembled the cafe. From his starting location, he quickly grabbed his cell phone to check his account's transaction history. With that sale, his money troubles were solved, and he celebrated his earnings from the 8 rings in the vault. Kim Ju-hyuk felt very happy because he still had many of them stored, so he wouldn't face any problems from now on. Suddenly, a suspicious notification popped up on his cell phone. It was a call from an unknown number. He answered quickly, without hesitation. The woman on the other end of the line immediately invited him to have a meal together. He asked how she had gotten his number, and she hurriedly explained that she was a teacher from Valhalla, and soon she gives him instructions for the location of the meal, without giving the boy any chance to question her, leaving him quite annoyed, because she had hung up on him. Kim Ju-hyuk then decides to go to the location, since he had nothing better to do, and the silly girl was going to spend all her money just to make him eat for free, thus concluding the scenes of this very unusual invitation. Once again, we return to the scene of the man in the black mask and black clothes. Morris asks why that man is there, and the man questions if their relationship is really that bad. Morris explains that a normal merchant cannot simply talk to the owner of the market, even if they've met a few times. That man standing there was the owner of the place, known as the Black Cat, who comments that he greatly admires the merchant for treating him in that way. Morris asks why the Black Cat is there again. He explains that it's nothing significant, just that the merchant's participation in the auction, for the first time in a long while, seemed very strange. Morris quickly comments that the anonymity of the registration seemed to be very flawed after all. The Black Cat explains that, as the real owner of the market was a constellation, he could access any information they wanted, and he immediately asked to see the items listed. For the auction, Morris agrees without any issue, though thinking that the Black Cat's interest in all of this was very strange, as it was his first time doing this. He quickly throws the black bag, containing the items from the era of destruction, onto the table, leaving the little Black Cat deep in thought and speechless. He soon comments on the value of those objects, leaving Morris confused about what he was talking about. So suddenly, out of nowhere, a panel appears saying that the constellation on the other side is watching in shock. The message repeats incessantly on the device. The Black Cat quickly realizes that his constellation desperately wanted that ring. Concluding this chapter of the story, in another location at the Valhalla restaurant, a fork gently wraps around the pasta, which looks quite delicious, and is soon brought toward the mouth. The teacher then savours the food slowly, and comments that it is very delicious and tasty. But soon she seems a little confused, quickly asking why Kim Ju-hyuk isn't eating, to which he replies that he's just wondering how Valhalla has a place like this. She explains that, besides the school cafeteria and the staff restaurant, there's also a normal place like this, but Kim Ju-hyuk isn't very interested in it. He then asks why she called him there. She's speechless for a brief moment, then she quickly invites him to be her assistant, but she immediately declines. The teacher asks him not to refuse so quickly, as he would gain many benefits as an intern. She pleads with him to listen for a bit, because it was obvious she would make this request. Kim Ju-hyuk shows a tiny bit of interest, asking about those benefits. The teacher says he would receive a scholarship and other financial aid, but he still isn't very interested. He would have the chance to write a paper with his mentor and could write about the 3 types of attacks on monsters if that happened. His name would be listed in the World Association of Monster Research, gaining much glory and wealth, but he still doesn't care. The teacher keeps trying to convince him, even offering more days off from school, but Kim Ju-hyuk remains unimpressed, leaving her deep in thought about her next persuasive proposal. She tries to appeal to his oversized ego, and fails miserably frustrated. She tries to end the conversation by imposing that he become her assistant. Kim Ju-hyuk responds again that he doesn't want to, thinking that her proposals weren't tempting or decent enough to accept. His urgent goal at that moment was to reach the center of the Great Forest, and even with the teacher as his instructor, it would be difficult to pass the performance evaluation. The protagonist then delivers a checkmate in the conversation, firmly stating that he doesn't want to be an assistant or write papers, leaving her very upset. The teacher quickly proposes to exchange information. Instead, she suggests giving some news of interest to Kim Ju-hyuk in exchange for the mysteries of the impressive monster attacks. He's interested in this, quickly learning that the gossip was about Choi Aaron. Kim Ju-hyuk soon says he's no longer interested, while thinking he was only helping the girl. But then, hears that she might be disowned by her own family. He's left a bit speechless upon hearing this, and quickly tries to leave, leaving his teacher desperate. Kim Ju-hyuk explains that he's finished eating, and the benefits weren't attractive enough, so he should leave. The teacher becomes very angry, because she expected some information in return. He tries to explain that he doesn't care, but has already heard everything. Kim Ju-hyuk asks permission to ask something he's very curious about. He asks why the teacher seems so strict in class, despite being overly childish. She, Tan Sandan, Purura de Barquires, explains that as she teaches about mysterious monsters, many problems would arise. If they were treated as a joke, the attacks could directly impact the students' survival rate. And since they were somewhat foolish, more strictness was required. Kim Ju-hyuk thinks it's all just a simple ideology. But it wasn't only that. It was the duty of a true teacher. He mockingly scoffs at these things, in a very arrogant manner. As he was about to leave, the teacher calls out to him again. He presses him for information, but doesn't succeed, thus ending these funny and tense scenes of the story. Meanwhile in Sejong, at the Choi-jin family's temple, a man was seated at a table, in front of two young people, the guild leader, Choi-jin Sayok. I had called them there to ask about their intentions. Before the classification test, to uphold the family's reputation. One of the young people present was from the group, True History the combat leader, and the eldest son of the Choi-jin family, Choi-jin-jin, the second person, was also a member of the Choi-jin family, known as Choi-ar in the leader, began explaining that, if they passed the classification test, they would have the chance to form a contract through Cheon Woldu, one of the sacred relics, a testament to the rightful successors in the family. But there was a huge caveat. If they failed, they would be literally cut off and expelled from the family. Without any further ado, Choi Jang-seok then asked if they were truly willing to go through with it. The boy affirmed without hesitation. Choi R.N. also responded the same way, without a second thought, and soon both were stared at by the leader, for a few moments deep in thought. Choi Jun-seok decided to relay all the necessary information. He explained that the test would take place in 3 weeks, and that they could leave the premises for now, which they affirmed. The two then began walking slowly toward the exit. Suddenly Choi Jin-jin asked if the girl had managed to read the stars. She looked a bit confused, as she hadn't quite understood the question. The boy then asked if she had noticed their father's